everyone who's listening. My name is Cristina, and I'm a mom. I have a 4-year-old son, and I am also a positive discipline educator. So, what I do is I help parents of little kids ages 3 to 6 how to parent in a way that is both kind and firm while keeping your sanity. It's basically that. And if anyone listening has a small child between the ages of 3 and 6, and you want to be in a support and community, I have a group on Facebook. It's called Parents of Preschoolers. So I welcome everyone to join us.
Perfect. So take us right from the beginning. How did well, I don't want to ask how you became a parent. I think we all know how children are made, right? Let me rephrase this question before I get canceled this morning. Describe your parenting journey to us, and ultimately, why did you want to become a parent?
Yeah, so I'm going to be very honest here. I didn't really have that calling that so many people have, that I'm going to have 20 kids. And since I was a little girl, I always want to be a mom. That didn't happen to me. It was more that I knew that I would regret it deeply if I wasn't a mom. I knew that I wanted to have that meaning in my life, because life has just so much more meaning when you have a child, right? Everything has more meaning. Your life, I think I knew that I wanted this in my life. I just wanted it as late as possible. I was like, I'm enjoying my life. Me and my husband, we had a great life. We traveled a lot. We really had a great relationship, and I knew that everything would change, because it just changes. So in some ways for better, some ways for worse, as everything in life. And I didn't want that. I wanted it to continue having this great life I had before. And so we postponed it really until, okay. And by the time I was 37, we were like, okay, now we should do it, because we might still want to have a second one, which in the meanwhile, we were like, no, one is already enough for us. Because as an older parent, I think you also, on one hand, you have a lot more patience. So I think that's a good thing. But on the other hand, your body has less energy. It's you know, just I see those moms who are 20 years old. And I remember when I was 20 and I went out at night, and the next day I could go straight to work. And nowadays it's 10 in the evening and I have to sleep. So your whole body is just your metabolism, you're just not ready so much to be behind the child that is waking up every 2 hours. And so, yeah, in the end, we decided to just have just one. But yeah, that's how we became parents. That's how I became a mom. It was not because I was born and since I was a little girl, I wanted to have a kid, but it was something I definitely knew I wanted. But if nature would allow me, I would have waited 20 years more.
I know here in Canada we have a lot of people are less people are getting married, and less people are having multiple children. Like, gone are the days where you'd have a family where there's like 3, 4, or 5 kids. And one of the main reasons is that they're waiting later on in life because there's still so much they want to do. And the fact that so many more people are in college, university, and they're navigating their life in a different way, it postpones getting pregnant. Like, to your point, right? Like, there was a time, maybe like your parents and maybe your grandparents, by like 22, 23, they already had like 2 kids, 3 kids, right? There's like an army of these people. Now it's more like it's just the one. And I always look at my life, and I want to have children early on, right? I was like, okay, Terrain, when you finish university and you get that degree, whoever you find, you're gonna get them pregnant. Right? I was so eager. And then, like you, I began to see life in a different way. There's things that I wanted to do, there's things I want to grow into. And I always felt there was like this disconnect between people who are so pro family, who, let's say, before 30, they had 3 or 4 kids. And then there was like maybe you and I and your husband who were thinking, okay, I'm ready. I want to have at least one. And you're okay just having one. Do you see maybe a disconnect between the two groups of people, one who want to have so many kids, and maybe they look at us and be like, are you sure you just want one? Have 2 more, have 3 more.
I think one thing that I'm always telling parents is that everyone has different opinions. It's just the way it is. And that's something also I teach my child, and that I believe everyone should teach their children. You will never have everyone agree with you. There will always be people that will have a different view of life. And because we hold on so tightly to our own opinions, we tend to criticize other people's opinions when they are different from ours. And so this unfortunately happens a lot, that moms especially criticize other moms. Okay, you became a mom too late. And because maybe I'm a bit jealous that you lived your life before, and because I see all the advantages of me being a young mom, I will say it was wrong what you did, and now, and sometimes, and this of course then creates all the mom guilt, right? Sometimes I also feel this mom guilt, like, oh, when I am 60, my son will be 20, I am retiring. And right now, my parents are now 65, so I see like how it is. And that's kind of sad, right? And maybe we die and before my son gets married and gets his own family, and all these things make me sad. But I think that the child deserves to come into this world because we want that child. And if that happens when you're in your 20s, that's great. It will have its advantages and its disadvantages. If I had a kid when I was 20, I would not be into this gentle parenting thing. I would probably be spanking my kid. I'm going to be very honest here because I had zero patience. I can see now that I have really grown. I improved myself. I worked a lot on my self growth throughout the years. I didn't know anything about meditation or any of those things when I was 20. I just wanted to go out at night. So I think that you need to be ready for it and want it. And if that happens when you're young, it's great. If it happens when you're old, it's great. But the most important thing is that you want your child, because it's so sad when people have kids they don't want, right?
Yeah, I look at if I had a kid when I was in my 20s, I think me and that child would be homeless at this point, right? Probably face down somewhere out living outside of a restaurant. But then you have the alternative, right? Like, do I want to wait until I'm 60 to have my first child? And then when I'm 80, the child is 20, or worse yet, when I'm 65 and retired, and I'm like, yes, it's my time now. My child is 5. Right. But you raised a good point where you have children when you want to have children because you're ready. I think a lot of people they fall into this mindset where life is like a checklist. Like, okay, I'm 18 years old. I'm gonna spend a couple of years in college university. I'm 22. Check number one. I've graduated school. Now I got to look to my left, look to my right. Who am I gonna marry? Okay, I got to do it in 2 to 3 years. Aha! That girl that used to sit beside me, that used to tease me in school, she actually did like me. So you get married. Checklist number one, and then within a year, we have to have that child. Right. So by the time you're 26, 27, you already have your family set. But I think what a lot of people forget is that they don't ask themselves, is this my checklist for my life? Or am I living the life of someone else that has been given to me? And I think that's where the disconnect is. Is that something that you would agree with?
I think that this is not just with parenting. I think it's with everything, and it comes a lot, in my opinion, from the way society is and the way the school system is. We are all meant to fit into a box, and we are raised that way, that we have to fit into this box. And I've realized, and I'm still learning, that the key to life is when you find out in what ways you are not inside that box. In what ways are you yourself? Are you really following your passions? Are you really living the life you want to live? Not because other people think it's the right life, but because of what you want. And very often we don't even know what we want, right? Because we were so indoctrinated our whole lives, right? So I think this is not just with parenting, it's with everything. This is something that the world would be such a better place if everyone would leave the box. And unfortunately, it's so sad that the school system is so hard trying to put everyone in the box, right?
Yeah, they don't see outside of it, right? The box has become their reality. And when you try to show them what is outside of the box, they're like, ooh, that's scary. I know inside the box. Inside the box is safe. It's comfortable. I know this evil. Outside, it's kind of scary, Christina. I don't want to go outside. Can I just stay inside the box where it's nice and safe? And you mentioned like you're into the parenting and you compared that if you had a child earlier on, your parenting style would be different. And you made a point where you mentioned the different types of parenting. I know you shared with me gentle parenting. So take us through that. How does that work and what is it? And um, how has it changed your life?
So I'm just going to start by saying that gentle parenting is just a word. Like there's many different words to say the same thing. Some people call it conscious parenting. Some people call it positive parenting. Some people call it uh, how is it, respectful parenting. There's so many different names, but they all basically mean the same thing. So when you think about it as if it was a quadrant, right? And on the y-axis, and I hope I'm not being too math here, it's just just a quadrant. On the y-axis, you have being really very, very attuned to your child, being very helpful, being very into their emotions, helping, supporting their emotions, so being very kind. And when you go to the bottom of that y-axis, you have the parents that are not kind at all. And then on the x-axis, you have on the left side those parents that are not firm at all, let their kids do everything. And on the right side, you have the parents that are very, very strict and impose really strict boundaries. So then you have basically this, your screen divided in four, right? And on the bottom left, you will have those parents that are not kind and they are also not firm. And this is called neglectful parenting. And I think we all know this, right? These are those parents who are just like, you know what, I can't deal with this right now. You do whatever you want. I'm not there to support you emotionally, but I'm also not there to impose any boundaries. I just have my own life, my own problems. You go and, I don't care. You want to ruin the whole house. I don't care. And I think every parent, by the way, of course, we all try and fit in one of these quadrants, but everyone kind of jumps around a little, right? Even the best parents in the universe will have moments where they are neglectful. And this is just, I'm just going to be honest here, it's just the way it is, because sometimes you're just overwhelmed. But yeah, this is neglectful parenting. Then you have the authoritarian parenting. This is the type of parenting most of us grew up with. So this is the type of parenting that is very strict. They impose very strict boundaries, but they are not gentle at all. They are not kind at all. So this is the type of parenting that is like, I don't care about your feelings. I don't care about what you think or say. You will do what I say because I am the boss of this household. So this is authoritarian parenting. And then you have on the top left corner, permissive parenting. Permissive parenting are actually many people confuse gentle parenting with permissive parenting. So permissive parentings are parents that are very, very kind, but they are not firm at all. This creates very spoiled kids. This is, for instance, that type of parent that when their kid is crying, so they say, okay, you cannot have a chocolate. The child cries, and they say, oh my God, you got sad. Oh, here, have the chocolate. So they are very, very kind and they are supportive emotionally, but they don't impose any boundaries. And so this creates entitled children. And then on the top right corner, you have the parenting style that is both kind and firm. And this is gentle parenting. And as you can imagine, when you raise a child with neglectful parenting, imagine you would just be neglectful parent all the time. That child will raise to know that they cannot trust anyone. They have to find things out by themselves. They have to deal with life by themselves. And the rules don't really apply to them, right? So they will raise this type of grown-ups. As I said, permissive parent raises kids that are very entitled, that believe that the world owes them, that, those Karens that everyone talks about nowadays. And then the authoritarian parenting creates all of us, most of us nowadays, which are those type of people that are, I don't trust other people I cannot tell other people what I'm feeling. I worry too much about what others are thinking. I want to please everyone. I have to deal with my feelings all by myself. I cannot ask for help and I have to fit in the box because that's how they were raised, right? They have to follow the rules and their feelings don't matter. And as you can imagine, gentle parenting raises kids that demand to be respected, but that also respect others, that are very in tune with their own feelings, that respect other people's feelings. And this is how we want to raise a child.
So when you have these conversations with the parents, because as you mentioned, I know I was raised by an authoritarian parent, right? But I didn't know my parents until much later on in their life. So I was raised by my grandmother, who was probably more in the gentle parenting area just because she was firm, but she was nice. And I think when it comes to the authoritarian, I think in general, those people are probably from the mentality where um, correcting behavior is done in a physical way. So it could be the spoon, it could be the belt, it could be a slap on the hand, things of that nature. So it's interesting to see how the largest group would probably be the authoritarian. They probably had the largest group of children, but yet that group is probably the most open of mind, right? Because they're still willing to learn different ways to be a parent themselves versus, let's say, for example, someone who's passive and they raise those who are very entitled. When they have their children, I can see like a conflict between themselves and the child. So do you like how do you help parents maybe change from becoming the parents that they grew up not liking because their parents was a different style that may be outdated or maybe counterproductive to the way they want to raise their child?
That's an awesome question. I think the first step, and this is what I always say, the first step is you cannot change unless you want to change. So the first step is being able to admit, and this is really important, you have to be able to admit that even though your parents might have done things that you really love, that you're passing along to your children, some values that you really cherish, and this is something you want to raise your child with, even though they might be awesome parents and you really love them and you don't want to disrespect them in any way, still there are things they did that were incorrect and you want to do different. You need to be able to do this because so many people cannot do this. You cannot imagine the amount of people that tell me things like, I was raised through punishments. I was raised through like you have to deal with your own feelings, and I turned out fine. So they cannot see that they did not turn out fine. That's the first thing you need to recognize, that you didn't turn out fine, that because your parents were like that, that's why you're emotionally unavailable, that's why you have troubles trusting other people, that's why you cannot cry in front of other people. You need to be able to recognize this, because if you don't recognize that, you cannot change. So I don't even talk to those parents because it's not worth it, because you need to be able, you cannot help people who don't want to be helped. That's just, so that's the first step. And then the second thing is to know that your brain is like a muscle and it can be trained. The same way that when you are not like in a good body shape, you can go to the gym, and if you train every day or every 2 days, or whenever you can, slowly your body will start to transform. The same happens with this muscle you have here, which is your brain. You can change this, but you need to practice. So you need to practice. And how do we practice this? We practice this with self-compassion, not having an all or nothing approach, not being like, oh, I was already a crappy parent today, so might as well give up and tomorrow I try again. Not having this, having that thing that okay, I was crappy before today the whole day, but now I'm going to stop and I'm going to apologize to my child, because this will make the world of a difference in their, in the little kid's head. It's having the self-compassion of being like, I am imperfect. Everyone is imperfect. There are no perfect parents. I screw up sometimes, and that's okay. And it's like Thomas Edison. Every time you make a mistake, it's just one more way you learn how not to make a light bulb. So, you don't, Thomas Edison was not like every day, oh my God, I can do this. No, it was like, interesting. I can't do it like that. Let's try another one. And that's how you have to be as a parent, because this is also an important skill to model to your child. You need to learn self-regulation, and this is not easy because you were not taught as you were growing up how to self-regulate. You learned many ways that were helpful for you as a kid, so defense mechanisms that worked for you when you were a kid, maybe helped you, prevent you from feeling hurt, but nowadays there are very unhealthy behaviors, right? And you need to learn how to change that, and anyone can do this. This is just a matter of practicing every single day. Some things that helpful are breathing meditation, practicing gratitude every day. At the end of the day, before going to bed, you think of 2 things that you did good that day. It doesn't matter. Maybe you had a really crappy day. I matched my socks. You did one good thing. You matched your socks. It doesn't matter. Just focus on, because all those things will make differences. It's one little thing. It's like, going on the treadmill for 5 minutes. Every single day, and that will make a difference.
I know a lot of people have difficulty acknowledging or even accepting, to your point, that their childhood may not have been the best because they've already coped with it in a way. So I'll give you an example. It's like when someone says that, well, my childhood was perfect. but they've had failed relationships. They can't interact with people in the way that they want to or find the success, but they're still existing. And to them, that is okay, right? Like they're just in the world, but they're not thriving. They're not growing. It's like plants, right? There comes a point where you have to stop watering dead plants because the plant isn't growing. You have a choice. You can try to nurture it for a period of time, or you can say that it's gone. Let it go. Let it go. So I see where you are, where there's some people that they just don't see it. And because of the bond between a parent and a child, I think for a lot of people, if they were to acknowledge that their parents, sorry, weren't the best, it's them saying that their parents have failed them in some way. And some people aren't ready for that type of conversation. Do you force that type of conversation where they're saying that, hey, it's okay. You didn't have a good childhood, but you can create a good childhood for your child?
I don't, because I don't believe that you can help people that don't want to be helped. And after spending many years of my life trying to do that, I gave up because you need to want to change. Otherwise, you cannot change. So, but I think that this is the same. It's a matter of, um, our brain always tries to justify our choices. And many people, when they were raised if I only know one way of raising, if everyone around me is telling me, because you have no idea the amount of people that are almost demanding that I spank my child, that I punish my child, that it's just that society wants to see that revenge, like a criminal. If a criminal commits an act of crime, they must go to jail. And so a small child, because they are deceitful, they are awful kids, they are bad kids, they are really very, very naughty, you need to be careful and you need to punish them. And when you don't do that, those people get really like, that's why they are spoiled. It's immediately like that. So that's why they were misbehaving, is because you are such a bad parent, because you don't spank them, because you don't punish them. So in a society where you're constantly hearing this, where people are demanding that you are an authoritarian where you were raised by authoritarian parents, where most of your family probably are authoritarian parents, it's just that you don't know anything else, right? And if you don't know anything else, you will probably also raise your child like that. Also because you're in this cycle, right? You don't know how to react in a different way. So when your child annoys you, you will be like, you will do as I say, young man, because that's what it's inside your brain. So don't, this is just a comfortable thing. And for those people to be like, this is not okay, it's them admitting that they are also failing their children. It's not just that they are admitting that their parents failed them, is that they are admitting that in some ways, they are failing their children. And this is very hard, and not everyone is ready to do this. That's why also people stay stuck in really crappy jobs their whole lives, because they are just like, but they yes, last month they told me I was doing a good job. I don't want to fail them. Like they are, it's just this mentality that you need to be able. It's like in Matrix. You need to be able to take the pill. You need to want to take the pill. If you don't want to do it, then there's no one who can force you. It's just.
That's a good example because I love the Matrix movies, and it's like Cypher in the Matrix where he knows it's bad. He knows it's fake. He knows it's not going anywhere, but he's like, I'm still willing to accept this form of reality versus what is actually the true reality. And he made a choice. And similar to a lot of these parents, it could be that, as you mentioned, they just don't want to admit that something is wrong. Like when we look at the schools and the information that they put out there, it seems that dysfunction within the education system is on the rise with the kids, right? They're undisciplined, they're unmotivated. There's all these problems, which, if true, strictly points back to the parents because it's not the responsibility of the educators to referee other people's children. But the parents have their own excuses. What do they say? I work too much. It's just me. I'm a single parent. My child is this. It's something that you're doing. The blame or the responsibility always seems to be pushed outward instead of maybe it being taken inward and saying that, you know what, my child is behaving this way because of something I did or something I didn't do. in their life. So when you mentioned so let's excuse those. When you mentioned the parents who want to make that change, who want to make that leap in the right direction, what are some of the early conversations you have with them to help them know that they're on the right steps?
So a very fast question to that before I go back to what you were saying. The if you want to change, you're already on the right step. That's it. There's nothing else. But going back to what you were saying about why kids nowadays are more indisciplined than before. When I was in school, if I misbehaved, I would get, slapped by the teacher. It was just an acceptable thing in schools. It's just nowadays, those teachers would go to jail probably. Right? So it's like the school system has changed. So a lot of the authoritarian style that was from the old days is no longer present in schools. So that also changes how the children behave in schools. And then one thing I'm going to say that is not a popular opinion, and but I have to say it, is that children who are raised like millennials and Gen X, that we were raised by authoritarian people, when we are completely, we had no support emotionally from our parents. We were raised in a way that we have to learn things by ourselves. When now put into this society, right? Because it was a cycle, right? Our great grandparents raised our grandparents like that, and then they raised, but they were all living kind of in a village where everyone was supporting each other, and the uncle was saying, "Hey, kids, stop that!" And nowadays, we live in this society where we are basically just for ourselves. We don't have a big family around us, most of us. In schools, they are no longer being authoritarian to our kids. And we feel very overwhelmed because suddenly this is the first generation where you have so many responsibilities. Like, you are expected to intervene. So, like, when I was a kid in kindergarten, if there was one party a year, it was too much. And my parents probably didn't go because, waste time for that. Nowadays, there's like one every month, and you are expected to go. And if you don't go, you're a bad parent, which means you need to take time off of work, and on top, so there's all these demands that are put on the parents, and especially the moms, that they just feel very overwhelmed. And because they didn't grow up with the emotional tools that help them with this resilience, they are not resilient, and they deal with this with, and here comes the unpopular opinion, a very neglectful style sometimes, when it's like that. What I was saying before, I don't have time for this, I don't have patience for this. Go and watch your laptop so that I can have a little time. And this is okay. I also do that. I'm not perfect either. I think every parent nowadays does this sometimes, but it's different doing that, you know, let's say 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, because you really need to breathe, and really turning your tablet into a babysitter. Because there are studies that show that children this young, they are not, their brain is because everyone knows that those things are addictive, right? When we are just scrolling, it's just, but we have like adult brains, and children have a very underdeveloped brains. So this really impacts the way their brain works, and their attention span is really so that's why they have problems then focusing in school, for instance, because they just want to scroll, and the teacher doesn't scroll, right? The teacher is just there, very boring, talking in a boring way, and they are not used to that. So what I'm saying is that those parents, they can change. Even if you've been raising your child like that all the time, it's never too late. You can always change. It's never too late. As I said, you can spend the whole day being a crappy parent. If you apologize at the end of the day, that will make a world of a difference. But you need to want to change, and you need to be able to say, okay, it's not okay what I'm doing, because and it comes because of the way I was raised myself. And you need to be able to do all this. This is an inner work that everyone needs to be able to do by themselves, right?
Yeah, I look at the parents who were, let's say, maybe around our age, and a lot of them worked hard because many of them were probably new immigrants or new arrivals to whatever country that they're currently living. Let's take America and Canada, for example. So they were working hard to perhaps provide their children with a lot of the things that they didn't have, such as a TV, the big house, the car, things of that nature, the games, the tablets. So these kids very likely grew up to develop a quote unquote friendship with some of these gadgets. So as they got older, that's what they knew, because their parents maybe weren't as around as they maybe wanted them to be, but they knew that there was always a substitute, so they gravitated to that substitute. Now when they're having children, what are they going to do? They're going to say, okay, here, stay in front of the TV, stay in front of the tablet. So now instead of young adults being conditioned like they were to rely on the gadgets, you have, to your point, very young kids who are conditioned to scroll, scroll, scroll. So it's instant gratification, instant adrenaline rush, right? It's just they're everything's just firing all at once in their mind, and it could be overwhelming because they haven't been trained in a sense to have the emotional awareness, the mental strength to say, okay, I've been on this for an hour. Let me go outside and actually interact with people. But you find out a lot of them are very closed. Like you tell them to go outside and play a sport, like, oh, outside scary, inside safe, right?
And it's like when you because one thing that many people tell me is like, oh, I grew up watching TV and I turned out fine. Like my kid can also watch a tablet, but it's different because when I was a kid, there was cartoons like Saturday mornings and in the afternoon on the weekdays from one or two TV channels, and that was it. Nowadays, they actually can like I don't like this one. Before you had to wait, there was commercials, and you had to stop and maybe go to the toilet or eat something. Now it's just you just scroll and scroll and scroll, and constantly 24/7. You are in the restaurant, and I can see the appeal of that, right? Because if you are in a restaurant, for instance, it's much easier to be like, look, here is the tablet, so I can have a conversation, than actually being there like, okay, no, you have to sit, we have to sit. This is hard. It's hard parenting. The same way that authoritarian parenting is also very easy parenting style, because you just have to say, you will do as I say, because you will fear me. I will put the fear of God in you, like people say sometimes, you will fear me, because otherwise you'll get spanked and you are scared and you will just do it. So immediately everything is solved. Whether you are, a neglectful parent or what, all the other, all the quadrants are very easy parenting, because you just either you scream at your kid and he will do what you say, or you just say, do whatever you want. I just don't care. I'm going to my room. Or you're like, you know what? Just have the tablet. And, all those things are much easier. But it's our job as parents to grow children that because they need those skills. It's our job as parents to give those skills to our children. And being a parent is the most important job in the world, in my opinion. That's what I do, why I do what I do, right? I really believe that this is the most important job. It will create mankind. It's like our our humanity depends on the way we raise our children. And also themselves, the little kids that you love more than anything in the world. You want that kid to be in healthy relationships as they grow. You want their kid to be able to, follow their dreams and really have the resilience and capacity to continue trying, even when it's hard. And if they are just looking for instant gratification, imagine when they turn like, teenagers, and they just want to escape. There's so many things out there that allows you to escape, right? And I I think that it's so dangerous when you don't do what you are supposed to do as a parent, which is to guide your child. And this means to be both kind and give the emotional support, but also give the boundaries they need. They need both things. And you can't get that from a tablet. Just can't.
I think two things has happened on top of what you shared. I think the tablet and the video game the 20 has become the 21st century bottle. Like, you know how you used to use the bottle, the pacifier to soothe the child? I think a lot of parents use the video game or the tablet to soothe the child. So instead of focusing on the child, like, okay, here, take this and go and don't bother me, it has replaced the bottle in the 21st century. Also, another thing that has happened, I believe, from observation as well as some of the views of a lot of people who are my age, like under 40, is that the view of parenting has changed. I think now it's more viewed as a negative by a lot of women in general, I would say. You have like you have certain movements that will say that well, if I have children, then I've wasted my life. I can't do everything that I want to do, right? I can't be the CEO. I can't make 100,000. Like, and I say that because you made a point where it's such an important role, and it's a role that, in a lot of ways, it's reliant on the woman to do, right? Because they bear the children, they're the first instructors of the child, right? But then you have some people that view it in such a negative light. Like you hear some people say that, well, I don't want to be barefoot and pregnant, right? Giving ode to like in the 1900s where all women were doing was having child after child after child. And then you have some people who compare it to a form of abuse. Like, well, if I have a child, I can't do what I want to do. Why should I give up my life for this other person? So I think it
And
has
you know what?
view. Go ahead.
I, I think that it's okay. It's okay not to have children. Not every woman has to have a child. It's perfectly fine. There are a lot of people already in the world, we don't need more people. If you want, like, you should only have a child if it's the thing that you really, really want. Because if you're unsure, if you're not sure, then just don't do it. Because every child in the world deserves to have a parent that really, really, really wants them. And if you think like, oh, I want to shout, I'm just not sure if I can do it, then do it. You will be able to do it. You can do it, like just do it. But if you're like, I enjoy my life, I love my life like it is, I want to be a CEO, which by the way, you can have both. But if you decide, no, I don't want to make, concessions here, I just want to be the CEO, I just want to be that type of person, I want to enjoy my life, that's fine. Everyone, whatever people choose, that's fine. But if you do decide to have a child, then make sure you really, really, really want your child and do your best to be a parent that you're proud of. Because are you proud of giving your child a tablet all the time? Because like what you were saying, that the soothing thing that you are just, like replacing the pacifier. Imagine this. You have a very underdeveloped brain. So your brain, you cannot really process, you don't understand things like a grown up does. And every time that you have a tiny little bit of something that is frustrating to you or that is upsetting to you, you get a quick gratification, right? You will never learn how to deal with disappointment. You will never learn healthy ways to be resilient. You will never learn things like having a growth mindset where you are always focused on trying, even if you fail and you continue trying. You will not develop any of those things at a very, very young age, where it's very, very important to build these skills. So, what do you think happens when those kids turn into teenagers? You know, and they start feeling even more emotions, because suddenly when you become a teenager, it's like a whole universe of emotions, right? And you just want instant gratification, and you have access to many things, right? And that's why nowadays there are so many kids, dying and things like that. I don't want to go down that road, but it is true. It's our responsibility as parents. And again, I'm not saying you screwed up so far, your kid is being raised by, Miss Rachel. And now Miss Rachel, by the way, she's like a person from that makes videos for kids. So that now that your kid is screwed up, and I'm not saying that. The opposite of that. Never ever all or nothing approach. It's about the growth mindset. I screwed up. Now let me try and make amends. Now, I always talk about having a 51% approach to parenting, which means that you never say, I screwed up and, try to get tomorrow. You always say, I screwed up. That was the 49% of me being a bad parent. And now I will focus on the 51%, because I only need to be a good parent 51% of the time. That's it. That's already awesome. You don't need to be a perfect parent, because there are no perfect parents. But if you have an all or nothing mindset, you will definitely be a bad parent. Because you will always be like, for me, oh, I'm such a bad parent. Oh, for me, I'm going to lie in the blanket. It's not about you, it's about your kid. So you need to grow up, get out of it, and be like, okay, I screwed up. Everyone screws up. And when you apologize to your child at the end of that day, when you screwed up the whole day, what are you teaching? You're teaching your child that first, everyone screws up. So you're telling your child, I screwed up. I spent the day screaming at you. I let you watch cartoons all day. This is not okay. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was mad because mommy also gets mad sometimes. Everyone gets mad sometimes. And it's not okay to scream. And I screamed at you, and I'm sorry. Took you 5 minutes. Those 5 minutes, your child learned that. Everyone is imperfect. Everyone gets mad. The next time that your child is mad, they won't feel like there's something wrong with them. They will know that it's normal because mommy also gets mad. So everyone gets mad. They learn that when you make a mistake, and everyone makes mistakes, you need to apologize. You need to make amends. And you learn that mommy loves you even when they're mad, because that's the other thing you should say. You say, even though I screamed at you, even though I was mad and I misbehaved with you and I did wrong, I always loved you. I love you unconditionally. I love you when I'm mad. I love you when I'm happy. I love you when it's night, when it's day, all the time. So in those 5 minutes, your child, this will be the difference between your child believing that everything was because of them. Because when you think about it, like we as grown-ups, if you go to the supermarket and the woman at the clerk at the register, she's like being snarky at you or whatever, very often you're like, oh, was it something I said? What did I do? I didn't do anything. Like you immediately take it as it. You don't think, oh, she's probably having a bad day, poor woman. No, you're like, oh my God, did I do something? What did I do? I didn't do anything. So you always take it to you, and you're grown up with a fully developed brain. Small children, especially between the ages of 3 and 6, they are very, very self-centered. Their brain, they really truly believe that the whole world, just revolves around them. Everything that happens is because of them and for them. So if their mom is screaming at the kid the whole day, they truly believe that it's because of them, that they are bad kids, that they are not deserving of love, that mom doesn't love them. And when you, at the end of the day, just spend those 5 minutes, that will be the difference between your child really, getting those things deep into their brains and being like, oh, this is fine. It's not about me, just mom. It will make the world of a difference. But you need to be able to snap out of your self pity, as a parent, be like, oh, specking myself, oh, I'm such a bad parent. I just want to be in the blanket. To be like, I'm a grown up. My child needs me, and I'm going to snap out of it, and I'm going to apologize.
Yeah, and that was the point that I was getting to, is that you don't want to enter it in a negative state of mind. You definitely don't want to shame someone else for not doing what you're doing, because if you don't want to be a parent, that is perfectly fine. But don't look down on someone and then accuse the situation or create the situation into something that it isn't. And to your point, if you're going to be a parent, be one that you would want for yourself, right? Be the best that you can be. And if you understand that you're lacking in any way, that's okay. No one knows everything, right? You gave the example about when you go for a job. No one gets hired saying that, okay, within one day, I'm going to be the best performer. And at day two, I'm going to own this business. No, you have to learn along the way. Do you have skills before? Yes. Are some of them going to transfer over? Yes. Do you know everything? Absolutely not. And I think that's where the parenting comes in, because a lot of us only know what we've seen, and a lot of what we've seen wasn't good, but that's okay too. But just focus on the positives from that, what you did enjoy, and then create a plan to raise your children, if you decide to, better. So, Christina, as we
I just want to say
go ahead.
something about what you just said. Sorry to interrupt you, but what you were saying, I was like, it's so true, because that's why I'm a parent educator. I didn't, was not born and thinking, I want to be a parent educator. It was actually when I became pregnant myself that I realized no one ever taught me how to be a parent. Like I started being like, there are so many things. Like you're pregnant, and suddenly people start talking about sudden infant death syndrome, about what type of pacifiers you should use, and like what type of soap you should use, and it's so like a world, and you get so overwhelmed, and everything is like, and I'm like, no, my God, I spent my whole life learning like useless shit. I'm sorry to say that word here, but just so many things that are completely useless to me right now at this moment, when I'm about to start the most important job I'll ever have in my life, which is to be a mom. So that's when I started learning and learning and learning, and that's why I teach people also, because it's not like the day you become a mom or a parent that the lightning strikes you and you are all knowing, but that's how people treat it in society. People treat that it's like this. You just learn along the way. Well, let's think that you're a brain surgeon, and I tell you, well, you'll just learn along the way. That doesn't make sense. You have to learn. You have to learn. First you need to be willing to learn, and second you need to be open to the learning, because that's the problem. Otherwise you will just be repeating all the things that you know from the way you were raised. And again, not everything you had was a good thing. Some things were good, some things won't be, and you have the power to change that, but you need to learn, because it's not automatic.